Welcome to Transcend to Triumph with Ben Spada as my guest speaker this evening. This is Kathleen Osborne, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to a 15-year veteran with the Marines who is also a father of 4 beautiful children, daughters, I believe.
Yep.
You're outnumbered in your house.
Just a little.
Just a little. And also an award-winning writer on Black Spear military thrillers. Now, question. Finish this sentence for me. Most writers think I write about, but it really is about.
I'd say most writers think I, Ben Spada, write about action. And in some senses that's true, but I feel I write more about the character's experience. The fight scenes, chase scenes, the conflict, the tension, those are all just tools to help the reader engage with what the protagonist, Cole West in this case, is going through. So throughout the 3 novels that have been released so far, there's a whole lot of action, and I like writing those scenes for sure. Those chapters are a blast to get through. But in the end, it is about Cole's journey and about being there with him and seeing him evolve.
Now, do you ever have times where it's very peaceful in your books?
Occasionally. I wouldn't necessarily say peaceful.
Reflective.
As much as still or quiet. Because there's absolutely those times where you need to hit the brakes a little bit so that the character can reflect, as well as the reader can digest everything that's going on. If it's going nonstop the entire time, not just for the characters in the novel, but for the reader too, it can be a very overwhelming experience. And also, it's kind of like a roller coaster. You got to go up a hill and you got to have that waiting point to go down and get that thrill, the speed rush. It has to slow around turns, because otherwise those big kind of blockbuster scenes, the big tension moments, the big payoff emotional impact parts, they lose their punch if it's been happening nonstop. Otherwise, it's just a nonstop barrage of just this blew up and that blew up, and it can be exhausting, not just for the reader, but for the writer, because I'm like, okay, I blew that up. What do I blow up next? Like, this guy got hurt. What happens next? So there has to be pacing and balance for all things.
I just went to a teaching on that very subject, and you hit the nail on the head. Everything they said, you just said, and like you, they are award-winning authors. And that's something people, I think a lot of writers don't do. They don't put the brakes on.
Well, it can be because the big action scenes, the fight scenes, the love scenes, if you're in that genre, like that's the meat and potatoes. Like you have an idea in your head of like, I want to have this culminating moment where these characters finally kiss, or this culminating moment where the good guy and the bad guy finally clash together, or those are the moments that stand out in your head. But much like a good dinner, and you have the meat and potatoes, but you need some seasoning in there, you need some balance, otherwise it becomes very hard on the palate. And it takes lots of different pieces to be more well-rounded, and to have, in my opinion, as a reader and a writer, what I like to get out of a book is a full experience. I don't want to be blasted with one sensation or one emotion or one mindset the entire time. I like when we get to run a more wider gamut of the experience. I want to see the protagonist be challenged. I want to see the protagonist be afraid. I want to see them persevere. I want to see them victorious. Of course, I want to see that, but I want to see them earn it. And I also want to see them take that minute to reflect on, like, well, what has happened between A and B.
I think that, because isn't that life?
Yeah, and I mean, as much as writing and reading and entertainment and movies and TV, whatever, can be an escape, I think it has to be, the threshold has to be relatable. And you see it all in all media, in all art, of things that are I don't know, shallow seems a little finger pointy and
Mm-hmm.
degrading, but you see some things that are a little shallow, and it's, you know, sometimes they do well and sometimes they don't. You've got some projects that they know exactly what they're doing. You got horror movies that are there just for shock and scares, and we're not necessarily there to see what the emotional impact of this Michael Myers Freddy Krueger killer is. It's more of like, hey, I'm just there to see something straightforward.
Yeah. What do you believe, or what did you believe when you started writing that you have changed your mind about since?
Something that I changed my mind for, and for the better, was I started writing as a hobby. I didn't necessarily strive to be award-winning or best-selling. I had a story in my head. I thought I always had fun writing ever since I was in elementary school. And so something I changed my mind on was that I thought the idea of being a published author was this unachievable thing, that writers are in this world separated from us. They're unreachable. You know, they're celebrity status. They're not, it's like reaching out to Brad Pitt. You're not going to have him answer your calls. And instead, I have found that for the most part, in my experience, writers are some of the most welcoming, supporting people in the creative field that you can imagine, where they want everybody to succeed. I have yet to meet anybody that was, you know, like a jerk about it. It truly feels that everybody remembers what it was like when they started, and they didn't have a foot in the door, and they didn't even know where the door was.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So I think the thing that I changed my mind on was how mystifying and mysterious and otherworldly just the writing world was. And for those that are unpublished yet, or somebody that just doesn't even know how to navigate these waters, I just want to tell them, like, it's definitely navigatable. People are always eager to help, and there's so many resources out there. There's so many avenues to publishing success and to transcend from working manuscript to a physical copy book in your hand. There's so many ways to do it now that the world really is your oyster, and, you know, you can go about it so many different ways that it is achievable. And with social media, like, writers are more connected than ever before. It's so much easier to connect and touch bases with people that you never would have thought possible.
For example, us.
Yeah.
You know, I watched you at Diamond Valley because I'm in Arizona, but I know everybody on the board there, and I was so impressed with the way you addressed being an author, how you did it, how you worked with your children. Without neglecting your children or your spouse, you still managed and held a position in the military. And that, from my experiences, over the top.
It's not a small thing.
No, it is not.
Yeah.
No. Now, I have another question. If someone watches your session and does exactly one thing that week, what should it be?
The one thing they should do is accept that any guidance, any lessons, any rules a published author or successful author gives them are not rules, they're suggestions. And all of the self-help books, all the writing guides on the shelves, they are tools for the toolbox and advice. They are not hard rules, and you do need to find a system or a discipline that works for you. At the end of the day, organization is great and a routine is great, but it is discipline that carries you through when the motivation kind of ebbs and flows. Discipline is what's going to keep you writing and keep going. And at the end of the day, 500 words here, 1,000 words there, 10 words there, it all does add up. So I think one of the things that can hamstring a new writer is if they are steadfast devoted to a roadmap or a plan or something that somebody else said you have to do, you can't do this. Just find what works. And there's nothing wrong with experimenting with your process, experimenting with your craft, and finding out that you're doing something that doesn't work. Like it's not cement shoes. You're not stuck in place. You can change your process. You can change how you write, what you write, when you write. And it should be fun. There should be some, maybe depending if you're writing, some confessional memoirs, maybe it shouldn't be fun, but it should be a bit of a release in some kind of cathartic sense. And if you are stressing yourself out over, well, so-and-so said I have to write 1,000 words every day if I want to be a real writer. So-and-so said I have to write the same time every day or I'm not a real writer. So-and-so said I have to have business cards. Like, just figure out what works for you, tailor it to your life, because while the writing experience on one hand can be very universal with the challenges we face, your life is not universal. We all have unique challenges. We all have unique things that come up that get in the way between us and the keyboard. So that's what I'd say. The one thing you got to remind yourself walking away is that there's not a test at the end where you have to give the correct answers of do A, B, C, and D, and you'll be successful. The way to be successful is find what works for you. And that is tricky advice because some people will just want the clear answer. And unfortunately, there isn't an absolute answer. That's why it's an art and not a science.
And I couldn't agree more. Everybody needs to find their own foothold. You can't mimic somebody else and expect to have the same result. Just like a true...
You don't want to mimic someone too closely anyway, because if you're
own
copying their style, their process, everything else, you're not going to find who you are as a writer. Because if you're just a mirror image of what Stephen King does, you're not going to become Stephen King. You need to find out what Ben Spada needs to be a successful writer. And also, you should set aside some time to write down what success means to you so that you can have more of a clear understanding of what the goal is. And it's not necessarily a finish line as much as it's a North Star to aim for. I think that's why some writers get discouraged, is because, well, you want to be successful, but what does that mean? Put it into measurable goalposts so you can see when you're actually getting close and when you made them. You should never be done necessarily with your writing journey. You should know that when you're making progress, and that can only happen if you list out your specific measurements of what success is.
I couldn't agree more. And I think writing is a self-actualization process because you never, ever get it perfect.
No, and that's
so you have to climbing up the mountain and get the information. I remember my first book. And I thought it was marvelous and it was horrible. But I also found out that I had written 3 books in one, which is why it was horrible. And so I had to find help on how to separate out. Never be afraid to ask for help.
No. It's at the end of the day, it's your name that's going to be on, or your pseudonym that's going to be on the cover. But there's so many people that play a part, whether new writers realize that or not. It's my name on the cover, but they don't have my editor's name on the cover, or the cover designer, or the publishing team that's putting it out there, the formatter, the experts that played a part in me understanding the science of something, or just the people that helped inspire the story. It feels like a singular journey at times, but we do have to remind ourselves it is nowhere near you're on your own. It's not. There's so much help around you that you're not even seeing a lot of the time, or even aware that they're playing a part, even if you don't think about it. Like right now, my wife is downstairs with our 4 kids. That's supporting. I'm not alone in this journey at all, ever.
Exactly. In fact, that makes me ask you, what made you finally sit down and write?
So this is a funny story, because usually when somebody's asked something like that, it's a very positive thing of like, I just had a story I had to write. And as I said before, I've always been writing, whether it was like short little stories in between classes when I was in fourth grade, or, you know, just making up something on a Word document when I was in junior high, just for fun for myself. But the thing that finally got me to sit down and start writing a story that had been dwelling in my head for a while was I wasn't inspired by a book that was amazing. I was inspired by a book I did not care for. And I've told the story a couple times, but I read it and I was complaining to some of my friends, some of my Marines. I was like, yeah, look, there's typos on the page and everything's predictable, and like nothing is really, the pacing doesn't make sense. And eventually one of my very good friends, he was just like, okay, but you paid for it. Like, you can talk about how this book isn't that good, but it's published and he got paid for it and you read it. So like, it clearly must be good enough to some people. And that's what helped to demystify some of the thing I was talking about earlier about this unreachable mountaintop of publishing. Was I realized that, you know, not everything on the bookshelf is this perfect, refined work of art. And once you understand that, then it lessens the blow and the sting of thinking like, well, what if my project has typos? It's like, well, this one's published and it has typos. Like, that's fine. So it kind of took one of my friends, one of my Marines, being like, well, if you're so good, why don't you try it? I'm like, you know what, fine, I will. And then I did. And I just kind of keep at it as this stubborn pursuit of spite and pettiness. And it's like, oh, I guess I actually can do this. And you know what? I should probably apologize to that guy, because I understand how mistakes can happen and how, like, you know, you can edit and revise a manuscript 10 times and then there's still a typo that sneaks by you and you're just like, how did that happen? So that's what finally convinced me to sit down and write, was one of my friends and challenging me saying, if you could do it, why don't you? Good question. Let's find out.
It is. Your session is called Bad Times, Good Lessons. Why does hard experience make better fiction than easy experience?
I think because it stands out. And some of the best learning experiences are from the harsh experiences. You know, the kid that touches the stovetop and realizes I probably shouldn't touch that. Or, you know, somebody that made the wrong choice and drove after drinking a few and they had to spend some time behind bars. Like, those are the lessons that stick. They're also the experiences and memories that stand out. Because when we think about our Monday through Friday, or, you know, holy crap, I've been in the Marine Corps 15 years, what happened? Like, where did the time go? The day-to-day routine doesn't necessarily stand out, but it's those significant deviations from the norms, which usually come from either really good times, like, hey, the birth of your child, your wedding, the time you got promoted, the time you got the award, or on the other side of the spectrum, the bad times, the times that your power went out, so your alarm didn't go off, the time that some equipment went missing and you spent all day and all night looking for missing night vision goggles, or the time that somebody got hurt. Because you learn the most in the most character change in yourself, the most development. I'm of the opinion that it provides an opportunity from the hardest things. And why that translates well to fiction and writing is because we want to see our characters change. You want to see something that compels the reader to attend through the journey. So we want to see them grow. We want to see characters evolve and learn something. And tension and hard experiences help build that fuel for that change.
I couldn't agree with you more. Now, how do you write about something that mattered to you without turning it into therapy on a page?
I think for fiction, you have to put it through a lens that understands you don't necessarily have all the answers. You might have come to some reconciliation from the experience, but unless you are a doctor or a psychologist or a therapist, like, don't think you have all the answers and you've got it all figured out. And I think there's a way to do it without being preachy, of like, I figured it out and this is the lesson I learned and I solved the problems. Like, the problems aren't necessarily solved. It's more of like, how did you reconcile and how are you learning to accept the problems? Because a lot of the, for instance, in thrillers, it's a lot of geopolitics, it's a lot of complicated issues. Disenfranchisement of veterans is a big piece of the first novel. And if those were simple issues to fix, they would be fixed. So I think understanding that when problems are too big for one person to solve, don't put yourself up on a soapbox and claim you've got it all figured out. But at the same time, it should be a little bit of a therapy session behind the scenes, I think. I think it can help you work out what you're going through or see that you were going through something that you didn't realize. But it shouldn't necessarily become a therapy session with the reader on the couch watching this author deal with their own problems in real time. Like there is a balance to that can be a little tricky.
So in memoirs, how would you apply that? Because somebody is, you're going to find that time where somebody mentally is on the couch or bordering on getting on the couch. How would you recommend that they handle that?
I think in memoirs, it's in some ways going to be inevitably a bit of a therapy session. But I think keeping the focus on this is what I went through without preaching as saying this is how it's solved for everyone is what's important. Because if you're going through depression or your marriage is on the rocks or you lost a loved one or you've got substance abuse issues, those can be universal in some ways, but they're deeply personal in others. So I think sometimes when readers are reading memoirs like that, they don't want them to solve their problems in a therapy session, but they want to read that it can be solved. So by keeping it personal to you without positing that you've got the answer for everyone, I think that's a fair distinction to make.
Okay. How do you write about something that mattered to you without it? Well, we just talked about that. Sorry. Tension is the word in your subtitle. What actually creates tension on a page mechanically?
There's two major ways that I like to implement tension. There's known tension and unknown tension. Tension can be something that the reader knows, but the characters or the people on the page don't. So it can be something mechanically like character A knows that character B is hiding money from them or hiding a text message conversation from them. They know that, the reader knows that, but the characters don't. And so there's that underlying bubbling right beneath the surface where the reader is waiting for those bubbles to kind of pop over the surface level and get out into the open, because it's like a taut piano wire where we know it's drawing tighter and tighter with the emotions that are drawing up, but the characters on the page don't necessarily know that we know. Or another mechanical issue is tension that is known. So in fiction, that can be, I know somebody is gunning for me, but I don't know where they are. The threat or the approaching miasma or danger is known to me, so it's right there in front of me. And that can be, trying to figure out how that would translate into tension for memoirs. That could be like, we know that he's dealing with substance issues, but we haven't figured out how to confront it yet. So known tension is great because it's there clear directly in front of all the characters or people on the page. Unknown tension is great for the reader because we're waiting for the people on the page to realize what danger they're in or what drama is about to unfold or what character moment is about to culminate.
Because you can have a memoir about somebody who has been through a very violent relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But it's recognizing first that they were in a violent relationship. A lot of people... Go
in
ahead.
something like that too, you see it on certain crime dramas or stuff like that, where the viewer or reader going in knows that things are going to get bad. And that could be on the cover, that could be on the back cover blurb, where we know what the memoir is discussing, but the page is tense because the person that went through it hasn't gone through it yet. So with each turn of the page, you see some evidence here, something that seems dismissible at first as just like weird behavior, but the whole time you know how bad it's going to be. Or you know it's going to get bad, but you don't know just how bad. You know, you can understand if somebody says abusive relationship, that's such a loaded word with so much terrible stuff behind it. But what do you mean by that? And so it's such a wide spanning thing. It's like, is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it financial? So that also creates tension for the reader, because as terrible as it is, like there's a desire to empathize and understand how bad did it get, and how did it get to that point, and how did they get through it?
So true. And I witnessed so much of it in the military. The civilian spouses, and it didn't matter if they were male or female.
No, it doesn't.
What do you tell a veteran or anyone with a hard story who says nobody wants to read about this?
Tell him he's full of shit, to be direct.
I love it.
The thing is, when it comes to writing, some veterans and military personnel can feel isolated in the sense of like, well, it's just one of so many. What makes mine so special? But the same guys, if you go to the VFW or the American Legion or any bar or any, Marine Corps birthday ball, it's nothing but trading stories. Every military and veterans and even civilian communities, they're so interested in hearing everyone's story. So I understand why people can be standoffish with telling theirs, because there's just so many, and it's true, there are many, but yours is yours, and there's some quirk, there's some unique thing in that's going to separate it. Marine Corps people in particular can be such vulgar and beautiful storytellers out at a smoke pit outside of barracks. And it doesn't matter how many stories I've heard of like, oh, this one time at the barracks, we were so drunk. It's like everybody tells it differently. And they're almost always hilarious and endearing and personal. So if any dude says, or any gal says, nobody wants to read about my life, yes, they do. And in a world where Sharknado has been made in seven Sharknado movies, I think they're up to 7. They could be up to 10 for all I know. But there is an audience for everything, and there is a reader for every book. So Amazon is just overflowing with books. Your Barnes & Noble, you walk through, the shelves are full. There is a market for whatever story you are trying to tell. I guarantee it.
Yes, absolutely. What's the first thing you'd have someone do if somebody had an experience and they came to you and they had no idea how to shape it into a story?
I would tell them to write it down, not as a manuscript, not as a draft, anything, not creative writing, just write it down, what happened. Because our memories, as strong as they can be incredibly unreliable. And especially if you're writing a memoir or something that you want to get right, which you should, you want to make sure that you've got all the data correctly. So write down what happened, the factors that led up to it, and the aftermath, or what changed coming out of it. How you changed, how relationships with people involved changed, the processes, if it was at work or in the family home, whatever, because there's something significant about this that you want to write about it. So there had to be some associated change. So write down everything you remember about it, and then, if applicable, reach out to the other people. It's just like doing your research. If you were doing, a science fiction novel and you didn't know anything about faster than light travel, you would have to reach out to an expert. But in this regard, it's more of a committee, because you most likely were not alone in this experience. And your perspective, which is shaped by our own lens, our own feelings, our own previous experience, your perspective can shift the lens of what actually happened. That's not to say that it wasn't traumatic or it wasn't pivotal, but you might not have the full story that you think you do. You might have missed some details, and simply, if you never had the conversation, reaching out to those other people might shed light on a piece of it you weren't even aware of. And that can play into writing out the memoir. You write it from your perspective of what you understood at the time, what you felt at the time, what you believe to be true, and then the reveal afterwards of like, well, there was this other side I didn't know, and this, this ties back into the therapy session of like, this is what helped me reconcile with it and make amends with myself or the other person, or how to get past it, is realizing that there was a whole side I didn't even see. So the first thing, before you're shaping it into a story or whatever you're doing, making sure you got all the pieces, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, whatever you're doing. If you've got something that you want to turn into a story, you got to make sure you've got the beginning of what led up to it, the event itself, and the after effects, as well as any players that were along for the ride on it.
Okay. I want to go back to your Blackbeard books.
Yeah.
How many, or could you tell us one of the experiences that you actually lived that you show in that book, one of the books?
One of the experiences I lived is the first introduction of the main character, Cole, which is he's eager, he's trained, he's a warfighter, he wants to do this, but he's in a garrison setting. He's not on the front lines. He's never been deployed. So it's this feeling that's kind of indescribable unless you've been in the military, of wanting to do the thing you signed up to do, but so far being unproven. So there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with it. That was me for a lot of my initial years in the Marine Corps, because when I was coming in, we were still in the Middle East, but we were starting to draw down, and deployments were becoming less and less common. And we would have MEU deployments where you're on a ship, but those were, the common saying is the MEU isn't a real deployment. So there was a very real sense that I lived through of being unproven, being untested, and being this feeling of just put me in, coach, just put me in. And very literally pulled from my life experience was being relegated to making an officer's coffee. Like I put that in because of how diminishing it can feel. And now I'm a senior Marine for the most part, and I've asked people to make coffee, and you don't think anything of it at the time, but depending on how you task that out or make that request, if there's any other active military in the room, like, hey, be careful with how you're treating your junior people. I've always been careful because I remember what it was like to be the low man on the totem pole, and to have all this training, all this knowledge, all these things and lessons I've been taught and propped up for, that the Marine Corps invested in developing me into becoming the subject matter expert in my field, which is a very technical field of chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense, being trained to become this specialist, and then no, just make coffee and file my papers. Like it was a very diminishing feeling. And so that was almost shot for shot. I changed names for the people involved, but that was definitely a real experience. And as well as just being the new person, which is a big piece of the first Blackbeard book, FNG, being the outsider. Because I remember hitting the fleet. I remember every unit I've checked into. I'm going to check into a new unit soon. And when you're younger, that's a very isolating feeling, because everybody's already pretty clicked up. Everybody's pretty tight at the platoon. It becomes a family, and you just show up and you're the new guy. You don't belong yet. You don't have that interaction with anybody yet. You haven't built those relationships, and they've got all the inside jokes. They've got all the past experiences they can call back to. Hey, remember that time in Thailand that we did it? Yeah, it's great. Like, you haven't done that yet, have you, Ben? It's like, no, I haven't. So a lot of Cole's inner conflict as he goes through that first journey was pulled through what my early days in the Marine Corps kind of felt like. maybe not going up against terrorists armed with next gen biological weapons, but as far as feeling like the outsider and trying to find your place in things and this indescribable desire to prove you belong, like, yeah, that was all pulled from what I felt early on.
I can very well relate to that. What was the first thing that you'd have someone do? Never mind, we asked that. That's going to be, what are you hoping people will walk away from on October 3rd with, not just from your session, but from the whole day?
I hope they walk away with a newfound faith and belief that they can do it too. I hope they walk away with some clarity that whatever apprehensions they have, whatever speed bumps they have experienced on their writing journey, because I don't say roadblocks, because they're not, like,
they're detours.
They're detours, they're slight segues, but they can slow your progress, but they're not going to stop your progress. I hope that they walk away with a newfound appreciation perspective that it's not that bad. Like, whatever apprehensions you have, you can get through it. If I can do it with the limited brain power I have and limited time I have and my easily distracted self, like, you can absolutely do it too. And not to pull the card, but we all have the same 24 hours in a day. You can find time. And if you can't find it in that day, find it later in the week. But if I can squeeze out the time to write novels and short stories with a very demanding day job and 4 pretty demanding children and a wife I love very much, who I, should pay a little more attention to here and there, if I can find the time, I promise you can too. I think that there is a very special thing about the writing process, but I think at the same time, you got to look at it fairly with some common sense, and don't necessarily look at it every day as this magical experience, because there's some days it's not going to feel that way. Some days it's going to feel like clocking in at work. And I know I said earlier that you got to keep it fun or at least enjoyable, but at the same time, like, the not fun periods of writing, you do need to push yourself through. And don't tell yourself, well, it's too hard to get through, because it isn't. Like, you can, I promise you, if you've survived every day of your life so far, you can survive that paragraph. If you've made it through 35 years of life, 40, 50, 60, however old you are, you can finish that sentence. It's just touching keys. Don't make it a thing it isn't. Don't get lost in the eccentric writer isms of, hey, I've got to write in my special pants and I've got to have the right song playing in the background, and I absolutely need this Yankee Candle scent in the air. Like, I've got a writing desk now, but I do almost all of my writing like either on a couch with TV on in the background, my kids playing around, or at a coffee shop, and it doesn't have to be the same one, because I don't like the quiet. I do better when there's noise around. So stop waiting for things to be perfect. They never are. Just start writing. It's going to be fine. And you know what? It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be fine. Because the perfect first draft is the one that you finish. Because that's what a second draft is for. That's what the second draft is for. The second draft is to fix everything you jacked up. Like, stop worrying about it all. It's all going to be fine. Everybody relax. That's been my general attempt at a motto through this writing thing, is like, shit ain't nothing to me. You're going to make it. It's going to be okay.
Yeah. We have a saying in one of my writers groups, button chair.
Yep.
That's what you need.
So it's funny because, I know plenty of recruiters for the Marine Corps that have said similar things. Like, if I can get you to answer the phone, I can get you to boot camp. And it's, it's salesmanship, but it's also self-bribery. It's like, hey, if I can get you to put your shoes on to go to the gym, I guarantee I can get you to work out. So if I can get you to open up your laptop, I guarantee you can get some words on a page. And I don't know, it's just kind of like, it's Newton's laws, right? An object at rest stays at rest, and an object at motion stays in motion. So when you realize you're at rest and you're standing still, kick yourself in the ass a little bit, open up the Word document that you've been avoiding because it's a chapter you weren't particularly fired up about, or it was a chapter that was particularly difficult to write, but do the difficult work, do the boring work, do the fun work, do all of it.
Do you ever dictate?
Not really, but what I do is I'll talk to myself in my car for dialogue or things to see like how they sound to the ear versus how they look on a page. What I do, because I don't always have my laptop on me, and a lot of the times I'll be working in a secure area where I can't have my laptop on me. So I will write down pieces all the time wherever I'm at. I'll have a notebook that on one page it's, planning meeting notes and log stats and purse stats and training meetings coming up and training numbers. And on the other page, it's like just Ben writing stuff. And it's like a random line I thought of, an opener for a page or a paragraph, stuff like that. I also have a litany of notes on my phone that I try to dictate sometimes when I'm driving with CarPlay, and it doesn't always translate well. So there will be times I'm looking for a red light, and maybe not the safest driver, but I'll look for a red light and I'll punch it out and I'll text it to myself. And that way I've got that as almost like a rough draft note.
Yeah, I've just started dictating, and it's been interesting. And sometimes I forget and start typing, but I'm trying to teach myself to do that. Mm-hmm. Is there anything I should have asked you and didn't?
I suppose you could ask what work I have coming out soon.
Yes, absolutely.
The third Black Spear novel came out earlier this year. That's Project Darkheart. That's available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or order it through whatever your local shop is. But I also have a handful of short stories come out. One is in the Big Bad Book of Kaiju. So that's big monsters. It's an anthology, bunch of different authors with writing original monsters. So it's not Godzilla or King Kong. It's our own takes on it. And spoiler alert, I did mine on a Texas horned lizard because I just thought they're so cool. They've got the coolest defense mechanism where they squirt blood out of their eyes. So take that and make it jump. So that's one short story anthology that I'm in. Another one by Kevin J. Anderson is Into the Deep Dark Woods. That's all spooky horror and creepy stories, all taking place and centered around forests and woods. So I did mine, a bit of a period piece on a samurai who's pursuing a criminal into a forest. He claims the bounty, but then some not so awesome things start happening in the forest he has to get out of. That's available now, I think. And then the third, which will be coming out in October, I've got a short story in the latest anthology from Cohesion Press, which is Snafu Level Up. Every year, Snafu has a new theme. They've done Weird Wild West. They've done biohazards and viruses and scary stuff like that. They've done mutants. And then this year is literary RPG, which is a new genre, but it's exploding with titles like Dungeon Crawler Carl and some other things. So I've got a short story in that called Rage Quit, and I believe that comes out in October. So yeah, that's everything I've got coming out soon.
That is exciting. You have been one busy dude.
I try.
Now, it's been such a wonderful time talking with you.
Thanks for finding the time for me.
But he is our keynote speaker on writing for October 3rd. And it is going to be a webinar, so it doesn't matter where you live. You can live in Europe, you can live in Russia, you can live in the United States, and you can tune in. And it is going to be fabulous. He has a special code where you can get 10% off to sign up, and it's Spada. SPADA. And we will talk more, and you will see more of this later. Ben, thank you so much. Mm-hmm.